Showing up matters. That's the message of today's gospel. That our showing up matters. As we heard, the kingdom of heaven can be likened to a royal banquet, a wedding feast. The host, the king, the Lord, invites us to attend the feast. On earth, this is the Mass, the supper of the Lamb, partaking in the life of the church. In eternity, this is the feast of heaven. And we, who are on the list of those God has invited, are not only invited, but generously summoned, reminded, and encouraged to show up to the feast. Because showing up will matter. But we're never coerced. And herein lies a great mystery. God respects our freedom. It's the mystery of love. We are free to refuse God and his invitation. That's the high stake of freedom. That I can actually refuse God. That's in my power. And he allows it. And those nearest and dearest to me, they are free to refuse God. And yes, God, he allows that. And today's gospel shows this mystery, called the mystery of love, the mystery of freedom. It's the mystery of sin and evil, the mystery of having the power to refuse God. On one hand, God's lavish goodness is shown here. We see, following the custom of the time, the king sends his servants to remind all the invited guests that the feast was ready. As we heard, he dispatched his servants to summon the invited guests and to catch that. Not only were all these people provided the invitation, but they were all personally reached out to by one of the king's servants to notify them that everything was ready. And the king, he eagerly awaits their arrival. God wants us to arrive. As we see, he doesn't coerce. And to the king's surprise, no one showed up. No one showed up. So the king, in his patience and generosity, he sends even more servants a second time to summon the guests. Tell those who have been invited, he said, behold, the banquet is prepared. Everything is ready. Come to the feast. A couple more things we can't miss. This is no second-rate feast. Even go back to that first reading from the prophet Isaiah. It is a rich, lavish, royal banquet like none other. This is hosted by the king. And further, it's a pure gift from the king. It's free to attend. The guests are simply asked to show up, to come. But despite all this, the invited guests were not very interested. One went off to his farm, another to his business, and sadly, the rest, they go even as far as seizing the servants, the messengers of the king, mistreat them, and even kill them. They kill them. This is the mystery of evil, that God can be not only ignored, but violently rejected. And for as many reasons as there are people, in fact, we see that God, Jesus Christ, and the invitation to participate in his church is so often neglected and even refused by so many among us today. And how can that be? How can that be? Well, I just need to look at myself, look into my own heart. I see so often how absorbed I am in myself, my own life. I can be so absorbed. My desires, my priorities, my plans taking precedent. Hunting, fishing, comfort, entertainment. I can fill myself, my life, and my schedule up so much that I push God and holy things to the side. They get like the back burner. Those first invited guests, I would say, represent us when we prefer our own activities and plans, our own selves, over God. When things like Sunday Mass, life of prayer, generously giving our money, our things, our time to the church, when that takes second or third place to what I prefer doing. And we might say, that just looking at this setting around us, but in the end, when we die, everyone will be let into heaven anyways, right? We'll all end up there, right? Many of us might think and act like that, but this parable is a staunch warning from Jesus that must be taken seriously. We can't simply presume heaven. It's a very serious matter to reject or ignore the Lord's invitation for our lives today on earth, because our choices today will inevitably carry over to the next life. So to practically live as if, things like Sunday Mass, confession, a life of service, keeping the commandments is somehow like optional, is seriously dangerous to one's soul. So what do we do? For us here, the invited guests who have showed up, well, our challenge then is to keep showing up. For the invited guests who have showed up, to keep showing up, to keep making God the number one priority in our life. And at the same time, to continue to invite others to do the same, to come to the feast that is rich and lavish in what it provides.